A detail of a cover of Black Panther, written by Ta-Nehisi Coates and drawn by Brian Stelfreeze. Marvel. The cultural critic Mark Dery galvanized a generation of artists and intellectuals when he argued during the 1990s that African Americans whose histories had been obscured by slavery and racism were in danger of being written out of the future as well, unless they engaged the areas of art, literature and technology through which that future was being envisioned. Mr. Dery coined the term afrofuturism to describe the work of artists who use the tools of science fiction to imagine possible futures. The list of practitioners was relatively short at the time. It included black science fiction writers like Samuel Delany and Octavia Butler and the fantastical orchestra leader Sun Ra, who carried the name of the ancient Egyptian sun god and offered an allegory of salvation in which African Americans were urged to escape tribulation by emigrating to the stars. The ranks of the Afrofuturist creators have grown considerably over the last 25 years. They expanded in dramatic fashion with the release of the wildly successful film, Black Panther, the first major superhero movie to feature a black director and writers and a majority black cast. The film's most important distinction is that it is told from an Afrocentric point of view. It breaks with the spirit of derision that has always saturated Hollywood films about Africans. The movie takes its title from a 50-year-old Marvel Comics superhero who might easily have passed out of existence had he not crossed paths with the African-American comic book writer Christopher Priest, who broke into this white industry during the 1980s and achieved influence in time to keep Marvel from hollowing out the character that has now become one of its most lucrative properties. Black Panther made his first appearance in a Fantastic Four comic in 1966, just as the traditional civil rights movement was giving way to black power. The comic has been inescapably identified with black radicalism, but it was clearly finished and ready for distribution before the now famous voting rights organizers in Lowndes County, Ayla, adopted a snarling Black Panther as the ballot symbol for their new political party. And the issue reached stores months before Huey Newton and Bobby Seale founded the Black Panther Party in Oakland, California, which originally was conceived of as a vehicle to protect black citizens from police brutality but evolved into a Marxist revolutionary group. Black Panther's first appearance, in 1966. Marvel. The comic, as first introduced, was not the least bit radical in the political sense, and not even self-consciously black, but it had a genuinely radical subtext. The Black Panther's alter ego was T'Challa, a highly educated king of the mythical African kingdom of Wakanda, which had never been colonized by foreign powers and was the most technologically sophisticated country in the world. To underscore the country's prowess, King T'Challa introduces himself to the Fantastic Four by giving them a vehicle that runs on magnetic levitation. This portrait begs to be read as a critique of both the Western slave trade and the prevailing attitudes of superiority through which Westerners have long viewed Africans. The public understandably conflated the comic book character with the radical political party that carried the same name. This association created ambivalence inside Marvel, which periodically tried to change the character's name, and clearly played a role in keeping Black Panther a second-tier comic that often teetered on the verge of cancellation. Things stood thus in 1998 when Marvel, in the midst of financial meltdown, approached a brash African-American man named Christopher Priest with the prospect of revitalizing the withering Black Panther brand. Abraham Reisman wrote last month in Vulture that Mr. Priest was horrified by the offer because nobody read the comic, but he agreed to do it when the company insisted. Elsewhere, he spoke of being put off when colleagues suggested he make the character more street. Christopher Priest's Black Panther, Marvel. Mr. Priest was known for a combustible temper, and he eventually stalked away from Marvel. But the resounding success of the new film, which draws heavily on his characterization, underscores the value of the contribution he made when he decided to treat T'Challa as more of a king than a superhero and gave him the internal life of a military and diplomatic strategist. The decision to immerse readers more deeply in Wakandan mythology also paid creative dividends. Reginald Hudlin's Black Panther, Marvel. Other African-American writers have followed in Mr. Priest's footsteps. The filmmaker Reginald Hudlin had a successful run at the helm. Ta-Nehisi Coates, who is currently writing the series, has brought the books to a higher level of public notice. Nevertheless, the sinews of the film reflect the continuing influence of the pioneering man named Priest. This legacy bears out the argument Mr. Dery made a quarter-century ago, when he observed that black artists could use the tools of futurism to change how the world sees itself. A version of this editorial appears in print on February 25, 2018, on page State Route 10 of the New York edition, with the headline "The Afrofuturism of Black Panther."